managing uncertainty and emotional overwhelm. Okay, this is actually a thing, emotional overwhelm. A lot of people kind of know, they see it. Sometimes they don't see it in themselves, but they will generally see it in other people. But it's a diagnosable thing, emotional overwhelm. It's not a case of, chin up and get on with it. Let's face it, in our culture we are very much keep calm and carry on, which is fine. I get that, because we excuse me, because we don't want to wallow. The last thing we want to do is wallow and get stuck in that rut that we've talked about many times on these sessions. But in circumstances, emotional overwhelm can actually stick us in that rut. Sometimes it blocks the way out, the picture, because remember, there are chemicals in your system over 300 times more powerful than morphine. There are some serious stuff going on in your system, and sometimes you can't just say cheer up. Just make sure we're recording this session, guys. Sorry, yes we are. Yes, I thought I'd done it. Just wanted to make sure. If you've ever said to somebody, or you've been really overwhelmed with emotion, and somebody's told you to keep your chin up or cheer up, it doesn't always go down in the best way. And the reason for that is because of that chemical in the system that we've got. Very powerful. So we're going to look at emotional overwhelm. But the reason I've put uncertainty with it, managing uncertainty, is because a lot of uncertainty can start to lead to emotional overwhelm at the same time. So in complete honesty, I could have done a completely separate session for these two subjects, because there is so much content around these two subjects. So if anybody does want any more information on these subjects, just drop me a note at the end of the session in the chat box, okay? And potentially one of the other sessions further down the line we can expand the subject. But I've chosen the bits that I think will be most prominent for you within the time that we've got today. So that's what we're going to look at, and we're going to start with uncertainty. So we've got uncertainty and we've got emotional overwhelm. We're going to start with uncertainty, because as I've said, a lot of this can actually lead to the emotional overwhelm. And of course, one of the reasons we changed this, if you remember, and fair play for you guys to come on there, because this session, these two sessions today, the titles were only changed last week. We know we changed them short notice, but after Peter Law and I and Lindsay Partlow had a conversation last week, we felt it prominent to change them. With going into national lockdown in week 1, we felt it prominent to kind of come back and cover some of this kind of stuff again, because people are maybe feeling a bit more isolated, and we've got managing isolation also after this session at 11:30, so that'll be a good one, and it's a great one following on from isolation impact that we had before Christmas as well. So thank you for coming on at such short notice today. I appreciate it. Okay, so the role of uncertainty in life then. I've got a couple of descriptions and things for you here. I've brought in COVID as well, because obviously it's prominent with what's going on at the moment, and so on and so on and so on. The current COVID-19 pandemic has heightened uncertainty over the economy, employment, finances, relationships, and of course physical and mental health. Now, I don't want to overplay that slide whatsoever, but it has heightened uncertainty in the economy, employment, finances, relationships, physical and mental health. I'm not sure you could fit much more in there, to be honest. Now, I know the role of uncertainty plays, and if you guys have been on any of my change sessions that I've ran, or watched any on the YouTube channel, you will know one of the biggest reasons we don't like change is the perceived loss of control, and a lack of gestalt, a lack of balance, a lack of equilibrium. And what those two things both do is they give us uncertainty. So they knock us into an uncertain phase, and we've got a perceived loss of control about we can't do anything about it, or we perceive we can't do anything about it, and we feel out of balance. Okay, and this is why uncertainty knocks these things: employment, finances, relationships, physical and mental health. And in all honesty, I know lots of people obviously have been very, very poorly and worse with the pandemic. If you take the rest of the country that maybe haven't been physically poorly, or only been lightly physically poorly, the mental health impact is massive, which then impacts on relationships. It could then impact on your employment or your finances, and so on and so on and so on. Okay, so really quite important to make this point. Uncertainty generally in life we don't like. Add in COVID, exponentially worse. Okay, exponentially worse. Okay, the role of uncertainty in life. As human beings, we crave security. We want to feel safe and have a sense of control over our lives and well-being. So again, that comes back to that control factor that I mentioned with Gestalt. Control factor with Gestalt. Sorry, let me just turn that off, guys. I've got things beeping in the background. Just bear with me a second. I normally have those turned off. Apologies. I don't know if you can hear my beeps, but I can, and I don't want you to. So that sense of control, that perceived sense of control that we have, that's what affects it. Fear and uncertainty can leave you feeling stressed, anxious, powerless over the direction of your life. It can drain you emotionally and trap you in a downward spiral of endless what-ifs. We're going to look at that in a moment. And worst case scenarios about what tomorrow may bring. Okay? Now I know there's one or two people on this call that look at that and go, I don't do that. Yeah, so I know there are people like, sorry to, I don't want to give you a big head, Pete, but I know that me and you have conversations about this, Pete, and, you're the type of chap that kind of goes, well, do you know what? I'm not going to go down that route. I'm gonna go, well, what can I do? Rather than actually, what am I powerless to do? And there might be one or two other looking at these, again, I know Jack is also very glass half full, John Donnelly there, and so on and so on and so on. Okay, so there's a number of you that might look at that and kind of go, I don't do that a lot of the time. And if you don't, fantastic, absolutely brilliant. But if you do occasionally, it's okay as well. It's just a matter of catching it. And of course, as you know, my sessions, I've got some tips for you to take away today on how we can manage this and prevent it and deal with it and all that type of stuff. But it's okay. But just look at the powerful words that are in this for some people, because unfortunately, some people aren't glass half full, are they? And they aren't, do you know what, tomorrow's a new day, or make your bed and get into a routine and tick off something. Some people aren't like that, and they struggle to be like that. It might be conditioning, it might be the way they've talked to themselves for a long time, it might be that they let other people walk through their mind with their dirty feet. Whichever way it is, we can change this, but sometimes very hard for people, because remember, those emotions are very, very powerful, those feelings. 300 times more powerful than morphine, some of your chemicals in your system. So some really serious stuff in there, okay? But it can make you feel stressed, anxious, powerless over the direction of your life. It can drain you emotionally and trap you in a down spiral of endless what-ifs or worst-case scenarios. Okay? Whereas I quite like to think if I have a bad day, then tomorrow's going to be better. Okay, that's the kind of trigger I use. Bad day today. Do you know what? It was awful. Tomorrow's going to be great. Rather than tomorrow's going to be worse than that. So it is a psychological change, but obviously I've got some things for you to take away with that. Okay, so managing uncertainty, 5 top tips to give you, and then we're going to get into emotional overwhelm. Okay, so as you can see here, lots of question marks that he's trying to lasso. What if scenarios? Wow, 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 what if scenarios. In all the coaching I have ever done, one-to-one coaching, executive, personal, I stay away from the word life coaching because it conjures up bad pictures for people, sports coaching, whatever. Whatever coaching I've done in my life, and now I've been doing this for 14 years, so I've done quite a lot. This what if scenario is huge for people. It drives people crazy. And there's a reason your brain does it. Your brain does it to try and find out how to keep you safe. So when something goes wrong, or you perceive something might go wrong, your brain tries to conjure up different scenarios so it can put you into fight or flight to ensure that you survive whatever it is that's happening. As some of you guys will know, because you've seen me do stuff before, your fight or flight response is the same now, really, is the same when we were kind of cavemen and women, unfortunately. Our physiology has not changed that much. But your brain doesn't know the difference between fear and danger. It thinks they're the two same things. Most of the things that we do what-if scenario thinking about today are fearful, not dangerous, okay? Now, don't get me wrong, if you bring COVID in, there's a danger, isn't there? There's a real danger with COVID. If you don't follow the rules, if you don't do this, you don't wear a mask, you might get ill and worse, okay? So there's a perceived danger in there. But with the majority of things, you know, I haven't hit my sales target, you know, the weather, you know, potential lockdown, things like this, those things won't ultimately kill us. I know obviously COVID's a separate situation because there's a perceived danger there. It's fear. But your brain thinks they're the two same things, fear and danger. It thinks they're the two same things. If you're scared of spiders, for example, there is one species of spider in this country that can bite you and make you feel a bit sick. So the fear, the danger, there's no danger there. Unless you are that unlucky, a man-eating spider has found its way over here on a box of fruit from Africa and it seeked you out. The likelihood is very, 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 you know, millions to one. Okay, so the problem with spiders is fear, not danger, for a lot of people. But you will act in the same way. That happens with scenario planning. So when something comes up that you're fearful of or not confident about, or something that might push out your comfort zone, what happens is your brain starts generating a load of what-if scenarios. Okay? And they're normally not good what-if scenarios, because your brain wants to work out which is going to be the worst so you can deal with it. Okay? So what we have to really do with our brain is tell our brain the difference between fear and danger. Is this thing dangerous to me? What is the danger that is posing? Or is it my fear of? Okay. I'm running a course next month. And it's not my material. Somebody's asked me to run one of their courses for some people in America. And it's not my material. And that puts me outside my comfort zone a little bit, because I've got to learn somebody else's material and deliver it their way and all this type of stuff, right? And, you know, it's constantly been there, constantly been in the back of my head, but it's not dangerous, but it is causing me some fear. So it's causing me a bit of fear, and occasionally I've gone, oh God, what happens if this doesn't go well? And it's their brand as well as my brand that I'm thinking, and so on and so on and so on. Rather than actually going, how well will this go? So rather than getting the what-if scenarios of how well it could possibly go, that's what we need to do, rather than the what-if scenarios that create the uncertainty. So just bear that in mind. Fear is different to danger, but your brain will put you into a what-if scenario to try and keep you safe. That's where we are now emotionally intelligent enough to overtake the brain, to give it a better instruction, and kind of go, you know what, yes, scenario planning is important, I understand that, we only need to do it once, and actually what are the best case scenarios as well as potentially the worst case scenarios, okay? Okay, some tips then for you to take away about uncertainty, because I want to get onto emotional overwhelm. One, take action on what you can control, okay? So list out what you can control, and then generate an action plan. When people are feeling uncertain, they will focus, let's turn this heater off, 1 second guys. They will focus on what they can't do a lot of the time. So what we want to do is focus on what you can do. And you can see the little drawing here, things that matter, things that you can control, and there's normally a little crossover here, okay? So focus on what you can control rather than what you can't control, and that's really, really quite key to take away. There might be some things that you can't control, but you could influence. that you could influence, okay? And I think we've done a session on influencing skills. I think that's on the YouTube channel. So there's 6 different tools for influencing things. So go and have a look at that. And if you've got any questions, let me know. But what can you control? What could you possibly influence? And influence, you might not be able to influence it directly, but you might be able to influence it indirectly. Okay? So just have a think about that, because sometimes when we can't control things, it does make us feel better if we feel that we can influence it in some way. Okay? List out what you can't control and then park them. So this is another good thing. You know, I tell people to list out what you can control. Some people struggle to do that straight away because they've got all the stuff they can't control in their head. So if you can't list out what you can control, then do a list of what you can't control. Get it out. Get it out of your head. Write it down, okay? And then park it. But you have to mentally park it, okay? One of my old colleagues used to say that she kind of had an imaginary piece of hardboard that she would slot into her head every now and then. And this cardboard, this imaginary, you know, cardboard or hardboard, whatever, it would slot into her head. And all the stuff that she couldn't control or influence, she'd put behind the hardboard and then just move the hardboard back so they were squished against the back of her head. So it gave her the rest of the brain power for the rest of the day. That was just her little way of doing it. So write out what you can't control. Quite interestingly, a lot of people do that list and then realise that they can have some influence or can control some of it as well. So it's really interesting when you actually list it down rather than thinking of, oh, there's that, and then there's that, and then later, 2 minutes later, there's that, and 3 minutes later, there's that. Write it all down, get it out, and then park what you can't control. Mentally park. Go, do you know what? Can't control that right now. Parked. And also, it might be can't control that right now. It might not even be I can't control that forever. I can't control that right now. Park. Okay? We did do a session back in April time about acting now rather than for the future. Obviously, in first lockdown, people were restricted and couldn't do things they would normally do. So we ran a session about how do you act for the now and plan for the future. And that was all about park it, because you might not be able to do it right now, but you can always come back to that list as well. So if you do struggle with writing down what you can control, write down what you can't control, park it, have a look actually back at that list again. What could you influence any of that stuff, and then write down what you can control. Really, really good little point. Take action on what you can control, okay? And not just write the list, go and take action on what you can control, because that taking action alone will help you feel better. When it comes to it. Number 2, oh, that's not in order. I apologise for that. Let's get all these things in. That went a bit pear-shaped, didn't it? Challenge your need for certainty. So this is where you now start challenging, because, you know, I'll be very honest with you. I struggle with this because I want things to be black and white, certain. I want to know exactly what's going on, when it's going on. It's in the diary, don't change it because that's what we've agreed, kind of thing. Do you know what I mean, yeah? So I have to sometimes do this with me. Challenge your need for certainty. Why is it that we need everything certain all of the time? Maybe it's historic, maybe it's society we live in, whatever it may be. But challenge it. So in addition to worrying through every scenario, you may excessively seek reassurance from others, micromanage people, procrastinate, and repeatedly check things. So because of this need for certainty, you might do all of these things. So just notice a couple of those things. Micromanage other people. That's never normally a great thing to do unless somebody particularly likes being micromanaged. It may actually make you procrastinate and stop doing things, or repeatedly checking over and over and over and over and over and over again. Okay? Like when I leave my house, I kind of have to check the door several times to make sure it's locked. Maybe I'm a bit OCD, I don't know. But sometimes we need to challenge that need for certainty and maybe just go, I don't know what's going to happen, I'm just going to go with it. Okay, now for some people on this call, I've just said that, and you're going, oh my God, I can't do that. No, I can't just go with it. Yeah? So, some of you will be going, yeah, I can go with it, no problem. It will depend on your personality profile that you've got. If you're a high red, like me, you kind of struggle to just go with things because you want everything in order. Okay, if you're a lower red, maybe higher green, maybe you kind of go, what, you doing what? Let's just go with it. Just go with it, see what happens. I've certainly got better at going with it since COVID came around. Because the controlling factor in my profile, as it's been very low because there's not been a lot to control, to be honest. So it's been easier to go, do you know what, I'll see what tomorrow brings. I'll see what the next news update brings. I'll see what Boris says next time he's on, and so on and so on and so on. Okay? So sometimes we just need to challenge that need for certainty. Do we need to be certain about everything all of the time? Should we just go with the flow, as it were, sometimes? Okay? Challenge your need for certainty. Challenging behaviours here. Okay? So, if you look at something, you might, and you're not quite sure what's going to happen, you might start looking at, okay, well, what are the advantages and disadvantages of these things? That comes back to your scenario planning, but make sure you're doing both. Okay, don't just look at the disadvantages or all the bad stuff that might happen. You might want to look at the advantages. Well, you definitely want to look at the advantages of it as well. For instance, when the first lockdown happened, I didn't see any advantage to my organisation whatsoever when the lockdown went in place from a business point of view. Since then, one of the advantages is that, you know, we've got a fully fledged film studio and we're able to do stuff for people all over the world, in the States and Canada and in Asia and so on, which we've been doing, which we potentially might not have done before in such scope. So it's try to look for the advantages and disadvantages. What is absolute in life? Again, that comes back to going, you know, is there anything that's absolute? I think there's only really two things that are absolute. You know, we're born and we die, and you know, and that's about it, isn't it? When it comes to it, I mean, what else is absolute? And that just giving some thought around that might help you with what you're trying to control and help you deal with that uncertainty. Because what is really absolute? Yeah, is it absolute that, you know, we're gonna, you know, do what we think we're gonna do tomorrow? You know, and so on and so on. So just as a question to ask, what is really absolute? What is really certain? Because you'll probably find that most things are uncertain actually, but that might freak you out a bit until we get a head round it. Okay. Uncertainty doesn't mean bad. So this is another little concept to think about in your head. Uncertainty doesn't necessarily mean negative. Okay, it doesn't necessarily mean negative. Identify uncertainty triggers. So what is it that's triggering that feeling? Okay. Recognize when you feel the need for uncertainty. So recognize when the feeling comes. Okay, so if you again recognize it, it'll help you label it as well. Allow yourself to feel uncertain. So go with it, be okay with it, test it out. Yeah, go, do you know what? I feel like all out of balance at the moment. I'm going to go with it. Okay, balance is good. We like balance. Let's go with it. Just give it a test and see how it feels, yeah? You're not a fortune teller. So actually, being certain about stuff all the time is an unrealistic goal. Why? Because uncertainty is reality. That's the reality of life. Things are uncertain every day. So to actually think that you can be certain about everything, you're going to struggle with that. You're going to major struggle with that because you're going to get disappointed on a regular basis. Yeah? And then shift your attention once you've labelled it, once you've done the labelling, if you like, shift your attention to focus on something else. Okay? Good. Number 4, focus on the present. So again, I mentioned this earlier, when things are uncertain, it's normally the future that you're uncertain about. Focus on the present. Okay, take your mind on the present. You're not normally uncertain about the past because that's happened. It's always imagined future. that we're uncertain. That's scenario thinking. So focus on the present. Uncertainty is normal worry about a future state. Cannot control the future. Leaves us feeling hopeless, depressed about the delays ahead that we're going to get. Sorry, the days ahead. Switch your attention to the now. What are you going to do in the next 5 minutes? What are you going to do in the next 30 minutes? What are you going to do in the next hour? Okay, so I went through this when I was going through my divorce. My emotions weren't great. The divorce was up and down. Things were changing every day. And I remember it was my father, actually. I remember speaking to him one day going, what about this? And if she does that? And what happens if this happens? And all this type of stuff. And my dad just went, you know, focus on the next 5 minutes. And the moment he said it, I thought, I know that. I know that. I teach this stuff, I know that, but I wasn't doing it. Okay, so when your head starts getting all muddled about the future, one of the things that you can do, focus on the next 5 minutes. Yeah, focus on the next 10 minutes. What you're going to accomplish in the next 5, 10 minutes, 15 minutes, 30 minutes, hour. Then move to the next hour. Then move to the next hour. It's quite a good little stopgap exercise to just bring you back into the present. And any type of mindfulness will also focus on bringing you to the present and tagging your thoughts. So this tagging thing is quite important. Have a trigger. You're going to laugh at this, but my trigger is right about now. Now, I don't know anybody similar to my age, but right about now, The Funk Soul Brother is a song by Fatboy Slim. And it goes, right about now, the Funk Soul Brother. That's all you're going to get out of me from a singing voice. That is my trigger. When I'm getting my head muddled in the future, I actually go, right about now. And what that does is it says, right about now. Focus on now. That's the trigger I use. So that's an embarrassing thing to admit. I'll give you that. But right about now. That's my little trigger for bringing me back to the present and focusing on what's in front of me rather than there's 4 million scenarios that might be going on in my head as well. So find a trigger to bring you to the present. Very, very useful. Okay. Number 5, manage stress and anxiety. Again, we've done this a number of different times on different sessions, so it's only a quick slide. Exercise, get moving. Book in relaxation, that's an important one. Make sure you book in time to relax. Don't just think it will happen on its own, because it generally won't. Something else will take over. Sleep well, eat well. Okay, I'm not going to do any more in that because we've gone through other sessions where we've covered that a lot. If you want more on that, go and check out the YouTube channel. There's loads of stuff on what type of exercise you should be doing, how you can sleep better, and how you can eat better. Okay, all that type of stuff. Great. So, 5 different things there to take you away for dealing with uncertainty. Now we've got emotional overwhelm. Okay, so we link together. So uncertainty can generate emotional overwhelm, which is why I've kind of brought it together at the same thing. So let's have a look at emotional overwhelm. I told you there's quite a content-heavy session, this. Okay, so emotional overwhelm is a state of being beset in intense emotion that is difficult to manage. It can it can affect your ability to think and act rationally. Okay, emotional overwhelm may be caused by stress, traumatic life experiences, relationship issues, and much, much more. In brackets, like a pandemic. Okay, so there's a number of things that we know that can create emotional overwhelm. Okay, but there's also something called emotional flooding. Now, you may not have come across this before. Even if you've heard of emotional overwhelm, you may not have come across emotional flooding, albeit you might have had it in the past. High levels of stress and strong emotions contribute to the likelihood of emotional flooding. When an individual becomes flooded, there is a psychological response. This response can vary from person to person. I would also add into that, sometimes with emotional flooding, there is a physiological response as well to it. So we all know that there is a psychological response to emotional flooding, but there is also physiological evidence that people have physiological responses to it as well. Okay? When I get stressed, I get pains in my forearms. That's generally where the physiological stress comes out for me. Okay? It happened, started during my divorce, and now it just continues. So I know if I've got a bit of an achy forearm, I'm stressed, or I'm getting stressed. And this is after conversations with doctors and consultants and why my arms hurting, blah, blah. It's just it's the way it comes out. It's the way it comes out of me. Other people might get stiff necks, might get all achy, might get tense. Other people might feel sick. There is a physiological response in some people with emotional flooding as well as a psychological one. And the reason I've harped on about this for a little while is because it's really real. Okay, it's really real, this is. And we need to be able to understand it. And of course, I've got some tips for you to go and deal with it as well. But it's not a one-off training session, this. You know, it's like, as I've said on a couple of things that we've covered, it's like getting a tree. If you get I've got a little bonsai tree at home, okay? If you water the tree once and then expect it to grow leaves forever, then you're going to be incorrect. You've got to keep watering it, and it's exactly the same with emotional flooding. You've got to be able to keep going back to it and dealing with it on a regular basis, or even preventing it where you possibly can, okay? So yes, there is a physiological response, but there could well be a psychological response to people as well, okay? Good stuff. Okay, so there are 5 stages or signs, if you like, of emotional suffering. I've put them up here because I'm not quite sure you can see that little writing that's underneath there. But there are 5 signs of emotional suffering or overwhelm, okay? The first one might be a personality change. We all know this one. We all know when we've worked with somebody and all of a sudden we've come into work and they're not themselves. Yeah? If they're quiet, they might explode. And if they're an explodey type person, they might go quiet, for argument's sake. Yeah? So personality change is a big giveaway. Being agitated. Okay? Agitated, short-tempered, kind of like, oh God, everything, tiny little things are a massive problem, that sort of thing. That's a giveaway for emotional overwhelm as well. Withdrawn, like I've said, could go the opposite, could go withdrawn, quiet, not talk to anybody. Poor self-care, this is a good giveaway when people aren't looking after themselves. Okay, and ironically, it's the time when they need to look after themselves. Okay, so I've got a routine now. If I feel a little bit stressed or a little bit emotional, or whatever it may be, I've got a routine now. I go to the shop, I buy blueberries, I buy orange juice, I do a bit of exercise, I take some vitamins, I make sure I go to bed on time. I've got a routine. It's a routine that I've had for years now. When I'm feeling a bit like that, do something about it, John, and look after yourself, because you get out of it so much quicker. However, sometimes when you're in emotional overwhelm, you don't do that. It's actually ironic, really, because that's the time you need to do it, but we don't do it. So if you notice people eating rubbish, doing no exercise, talking themselves down, all this type of stuff is a great little trigger to go, do you know what, a bit of emotional overwhelm, a bit of emotional flooding might be going on with that person. And that of course leads to the last one, which is the feeling of being hopeless. Can't achieve anything, it's just all the world is bad, and so on and so on. So look, this is pretty common sense stuff. It isn't very common practice when we notice it, because we're sometimes wrapped up in what we're focused on rather than actually noticing some of these things. But it is worth noticing them, because you might be able to help at that point. So those are the 5 key signs of emotional flooding or emotional overwhelm. Okay, so 6 key things to prevent emotional overwhelm. Okay, so I've got 6 key things that you can take away that will help you prevent this. Okay, and there's, again, I don't know if you can quite see that writing, but there's a person there saying unchangeable past, imagine future, I won't be able to, I'll never, what's the point, what if, and so on and so on and so on. That what if scenario is huge. Okay, so in psychology it's got its own section. What if scenario. You could read a book a day for the rest of your life and not read all the content on what if scenarios. It's a massive thing for people. Quite interestingly, it's very, very useful in creative thinking. what if scenarios. What if you did have the budget? What if you did have the time? What if you did have the personnel? What if you could achieve that target? It's actually a really good tool when you're focusing it on something solution focused rather than problem focused, dare I say. But a lot of the time we use that what if scenario for bad things because of that danger and fear situation that I talked about right at the beginning. Okay. Pinpoint what you are feeling, number one. So this is ways to kind of prevent this emotional overwhelm from taking over. So number one, pinpoint what you are feeling, okay? Pay attention to how you feel and when you feel it. Okay, now some people at this point kind of go, oh God, he's getting all pink and fluffy again. I'm talking about noticing your feelings. That's exactly what I'm saying. And for the people that know me well, I'm not pink and fluffy. I'm not a pink and fluffy type person, really. What I'm saying is to take note of how you're feeling. There's nothing wrong with it. There's so many stigma. There's so much stigma about getting in touch with your feelings and stuff like that. Actually, notice what you're feeling. Okay? Notice what you're feeling and when you feel it, because you'll start to notice a pattern that will emerge. And that's why I've got this routine. I know when I start feeling certain things, I move myself into another routine to stop that routine from carrying on. So notice what you're feeling when you're feeling. Do I do it every time? No, not always. But I try and do it more often than not. That's the key. Okay? If you can deal with the exception if it's not the rule. If it's the other way round, you've got a problem. So if it's the other way round and you can't get out of it regularly, then you've got a hill to climb. But it's doable. Absolutely doable. And if you do it right most of the time, but occasionally you let yourself wallow for a couple of days, then you can pick yourself up from it afterwards, can't you? So notice when you feel and why you feel it. Write it down. So there's something called journaling in mental health, where you journal how you feel during the day. Okay? A lot of people kind of go, oh my God, really? I've got to write a diary of how I'm feeling? Yeah. Psychologically, when you write something down, you remove it from your head. Okay? And you commit to what it is on the paper. It's a psychological thing that's built in. It's probably because we've been writing for a long time as a society. Okay, so write it down if you can. You don't have to publish it. It doesn't have to be in depth. It might just go 10 o'clock, annoyed. 11 o'clock, little bit hopeless. Yeah, what caused it? Okay, hopeless, just had that, just missed that sale or whatever. Okay, so just think about that. Write it down if you want to. And then tackle one at a time. Once you've written it down for, let's say, a week, you can go back, you'll notice a pattern, and then you're able to go, okay, well, there's a pattern there, so let's tackle that one thing first. Let's tackle that one feeling first, and then I'll tackle number 2, and then I'll tackle number 3. Because if you try and tackle everything at once, then you're going to struggle with that, and the what if scenarios will then come back. Well, I'm going to do that, but what about that? I'm going to kind of blags your head a little bit. So write it down, do one thing at once. So pinpoint what you are feeling. Number 2, pinpoint why you are feeling it. Okay, so when you're journaling, I feel hopeless. Okay, why? What's the reason? Try and get to the nitty gritty. Well, this has just happened. Yeah, and if you don't quite know at the time, just write don't know on that one and move on. Because if you stand there worrying about it and trying to come up with something you're not quite sure of at the moment, then you'll probably stop journaling at that point as well. Yeah? So just, I'm feeling like this. If you know, write it down. If you know, just put don't know. If you get to the end of the week and you've got a lot of don't knows against one particular feeling, then you can do a little bit more diagnostic work on it when you're a little bit more detached at that point. Okay? So try and work out why you are feeling it. What is the reason? What is driving that feeling? Because we're going to start to try and get to the nitty gritty then. Yeah? And also, it's okay. So if you write down, I'm annoyed, angry, I feel depressed, don't then go, I shouldn't feel those things, because you don't feel very good, and then you beat yourself up for not feeling very good. So it's a double whammy. It's a catch-22 situation you catch yourself in. So write down why you're feeling. Write down why you're feeling it if you can. And then tell yourself that's okay at the moment. That's okay. I've got it. Wrote it down. Fine. No problem. I'll capture it. I'm going to do something about that. So just be a bit kinder to yourself. Don't beat yourself up for feeling bad, or some people don't beat yourself up for beating yourself up. That doesn't make any sense. Okay? Get over it, get past it. What's in the past is done, it's gone, move on. Okay? And then finally, you want to take some action on it. But you might not feel that you can take action straight away. That's okay. Just journal it for a couple of days, and if you don't even write it down, just keep it in your head for a couple of days, what you're feeling, why you're feeling it. Notice the pattern. Okay, notice the pattern, do a bit of diagnostic work, what's causing that, and then take some action on it if you can. If you can't, because of uncertainty, then you've got to go full circle back to the first half an hour of this session and do some of the things that you can do to make that uncertainty better. Okay? So this is why I've linked these two things together. Right? So I'll just say that one more time. If you're struggling to take action because it's not within your control and things are uncertain, go back to the first 30 minutes of this session on the YouTube channel and go, okay, there were 5 key things that I need to do there to help me with uncertainty. So you can go back and you can deal with that. Because otherwise what happens is you start ping-ponging from between feeling bad and uncertain, feeling bad and uncertain. And somewhere you need to make the break between those two things. Okay, so number 2, pinpoint why you're feeling it and take action on it if you can. Number 3, pause. When we've got emotional flooding and emotional overwhelm, it's worth just to stop for a moment. Okay? Stop it in its tracks. Okay? If you remember, for those that do done the sessions with me, dendrites, if you remember, these are pathways in your brain. If you've got lots of pathways, let's say you've got all of these pathways that are leading, okay, to emotional overwhelm or emotional flooding, okay, if you pause for a moment, what you might be able to do is just create a new path and cut off the old paths. Okay, so when you just pause and take control of your brain for a moment, the flood of chemical, you may be able just to stop for a moment and try to kind of stop it in its tracks, okay? So stop what you're doing, do some breathing exercises. The exercise I use and you guys might know is called 4-4-4. Breathe in for 4, hold it for 4, breathe out for 4, or sometimes it's called square breathing. So just stop, focus on your breathing, and then create some mental space. So that comes back to that piece of hardboard in your head, slot it in, move those feelings to the back of your brain, you know, in that pausing moment, and give yourself an opportunity to make some different thoughts going forward. Okay? So just pause. Just pause sometimes. It's worth doing it, even if it's just for a few minutes. Take yourself out of what's going on. When it's all getting too much, cut, pause, try to stop the dendrites over here from flooding that chemical into your system. Maybe do some breathing exercises, create a bit of mind space. Okay? And again, we've done sessions on this in the past. The mindfulness one, I think that's on the YouTube channel now. We talked about breathing and all that type of stuff. Okay? Number 4, disrupt the flow. So again, this follows the theme of disrupting these dendrite paths, all flooding your brain with chemical. Okay? So there's 3 other things that we can do to stop the flow of that emotional overwhelm. Number 1, and I always chuckle when I talk about this one, go to your happy place. Now, I don't know about you, but when I think happy place, I think Happy Gilmore. If you're not a golfer or interested in Adam Sandler, you may not have seen seen this movie. But Happy Gilmore, let's just say he's got some anger issues, and he has to go to a happy place to calm down. Now, your happy place could be, close your eyes and think of the last holiday you were on the beach, you were sitting down, you had a cold beer, you could hear the waves crashing, whatever your happy place is. For me, I think of beach and waves, as I've just said, but to be honest, I think of Happy Gilmore swearing at a golf ball. And actually, that's not my happy place, but because he went to a happy place in the film, it's a trigger for me, and it just makes me smile. Or I try and think of, an Only Fools and Horses sketch, either falling through the hatch or the chandelier, or Trigger listening to Mozart and, telling Dad it's the karaoke version because there's no words, or whatever. The trigger is to try and make you change the chemical in the system to something that's going to make you laugh. And I'm sure if there are any golfers on the session today, and I know Peter's as well, we've all had Happy Gilmore moments where we do want to swear at the golf ball and so on and so on. So it makes it quite real, even though obviously it was a Hollywood film and so on and so on and so on. Yeah? So go find your happy place. And again, people think this is pink and fluffy. It isn't. It is scientifically proven. If you can stop the flow of emotion that you don't want in your dendrites releasing into your system by channeling your thoughts somewhere else, it is scientifically proven that it can be done. So when somebody ever says, oh, the happy place stuff, it's all a load of rubbish, it really isn't. So think about what your happy place is, because it's really important. 5 minutes a day, go to your happy place. Even if you don't need to. 5 minutes a day, that's less than 1% of your day. And if there's anybody on this call that is saying to me, I ain't got 5 minutes, then get up 5 minutes earlier. Or go to bed 5 minutes later, right? 5 minutes is not a big ask, 300 seconds. But and try and do it at the same time every day. It's better for the routine for the body, okay? Go to your happy place. Make yourself feel good, 5 minutes every day. Yeah, it's worth it, it really is. And by the way, that's just a version of mindfulness, if anybody wants to know, okay? And focus on what's going to go well in the day, not what's not going to go well. Yeah, so when you're in this, everything's going wrong, stop, pause for a moment, like we said, go to your happy place, and then focus on, well, what is going well? What is going well? So even when it was hard last year for me, from a business point of view, and it was hard for a lot of us, wasn't it, from a business point of view, I kept saying to myself, my family are okay, my daughters are okay, I'm okay, let's crack on, okay? So what is going well, focus on that, because it will really help, okay? And it will also give you gestalt. As you guys know, my favourite word, balance. It will bring you balance back into your day, and it will help with that emotional overwhelm. Okay? Number 5, expel the negative feelings. So remember, 1 to 4 so far has been about noticing them, understanding why, then going to a happy place and try to start to flood, change the chemical flood, or halt the chemical flood. This is about expelling the chemical flood. Now, if we can get to this stage, that's even better. So, stop beating yourself up for beating yourself up, which we've already talked about, okay? Generate helpful thoughts now. Now, remember, 1 to 4 hasn't been about coming up with helpful thoughts. It's just been about stopping and noticing the bad ones. Okay? Now we're talking about what helpful thoughts have you got. And as you guys will no doubt know, I am going to mention my top favourite book of all time, What to Say When You Talk to Yourself. I know several of you on this call have read it already by now. Go on the YouTube channel, check it out, go and buy it, read it. Absolutely brilliant. Best piece of reading you're ever going to read regarding to how you give yourself helpful thoughts, okay? So generate some helpful thoughts and put it into a 3 times a day trigger. So put it into what we call a trigger, or sometimes in psychology it's called an anchor, where you're able to do that, and do it 3 times a day, and over a 6 to 8 week period you will start to change dendrite paths in your head. And finally, to finish off the session, number 6, okay? See mistakes. Do you like me little Homer, my little dough? Yeah, we all have a few of them, don't we? When we beat ourselves up, or we look back on our day and go, oh, you were miserable then. Why did you do all dough? Yeah? Take mistakes as mistakes. Okay? If life is one big audition, when you get it wrong, it's just a mistake. Just a mistake. You get another go. You get another shot at it, okay? As long as you're alive, you keep getting retakes, don't you, at doing things in life, okay? So, unsuccessful people give up. That's the difference between successful people and unsuccessful people. That's about it, okay? If you watch Dragon's Den, half of those dragons have been bankrupt, some of them more than once, okay? But what they did is they learned from the mistakes, did it again, didn't give up, got it right, okay? if you are going to try something again, don't try the same thing. Go over the head, under the leg. Well, for the people that I've tied up before, in the ropes exercise, over the head, under the legs. Or if you always do what you've always done, you'll always get what you've always got, in other words. So keep trying, keep doing it. If you make a mistake, you have a bad day, don't beat yourself up for it. It's just a mistake. Just have another go on the back of it, yeah? And remember, this is all going to help with this emotional overwhelm, okay? Successful people try again. Like I've said, unsuccessful people give up. Successful people, they keep trying, but they don't keep trying the same thing. Okay? I know practice doesn't make perfect. Perfect practice makes perfect, actually. So learn from what you need to do. Try something slightly different and move forward if it hasn't worked for you. It's just a mistake. You get another go. Okay? Learn and adapt and don't try the same thing, which is what we've just said there. So, amazingly, I've actually finished on time for once, rather than running over by a couple of minutes. So I know there was lots of content in this particular session because, like I said, these two subjects, actually, you could have probably split them out into two subjects. But I've just got a message. Let's have a quick look. A person who never made a mistake, never tried anything new. Albert Einstein. Absolutely love it. Thank you for that, Pete. You're absolutely right. And remember, mistakes, if this is your trigger to take away, mistakes are just mistakes.